is one of those that is exciting and fun, and we have been growing a lot in the area of missions. We've really sort of challenged our congregation to grow in different ways. We have a budget from the church, and then we have these Meet the Need campaigns where we tackle some hands-on projects. And so overseeing distribution of funds, doing projects, engaging with the community, that sort of thing within the missions world. So I have been here at the church 7.5 or so years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Seems longer than that. We couldn't do anything without her.
And I'm Gail Grothier, and my husband is the associate pastor here. He's a retired minister from other churches. And we've been here just a little over a year. We just started our 2nd year. And Michelle quickly got me on the missions committee. So here I am.
Lightning, you want to go?
Yes, you can hear me? Good. I'm Latney McNakin, and I've been at the church about, I think, 5 years now, and joined the missions committee several years ago, and very excited about this new opportunity that we have. I look forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Wonderful.
Good. All right. Oh, there you go, Nancy.
I'm Nancy Sheets, and I was chair of missions forever and ever and ever, and I retired from doing that. And I'm just thrilled with what Lynn and Michelle and the committee are doing, and I'm happy to keep helping. I just burned out from being the leader. I'm old.
Nancy.
You're not alone, Nancy.
I know.
Nancy mentioned Lynn Williams is the chair of our missions committee, and she was the one that she still works, and so it was dependent on her work schedule today.
Great. Well, I did press record when we started the introduction so that Lynn won't miss anything. We can share it with her and anyone else that you decide is helpful. So we'll record this. So let me start off by saying that I've been working in refugee and immigrant services and as a volunteer coordinator for 8 years, and I worked at an organization called World Relief, which is another agency, and then I moved to Inspiritus a little over 2 years ago, doing the same thing. So there are 9 national agencies that do refugee resettlement in the U.S., and of those 9, 4 of them are operating out of the Atlanta area.
Wow.
And then of the 4 here in Georgia, we at Inspiritus are the only agency that have an office outside of Atlanta in the state of Georgia, which is in Savannah. So it's really exciting for Savannah and for us to do refugee resettlement in Savannah, because we're the only ones that are doing it there. We're the only ones serving refugee and immigrants in the Savannah area. So I had been, during the pandemic, and then up until recently, overseeing community engagement in both Atlanta and Savannah, because during the pandemic, we were all of our volunteer opportunities were specifically virtual, and we weren't resettling a lot of families, very, very few. And so it was a pretty easy job to kind of manage everything remotely. We operate off of a fiscal year. So our fiscal year starts October 1st, but we really had started ramping up arrivals in Savannah, I would say probably in like July, August, we started receiving several families, and people started kind of coming out of that pandemic bubble and really itching to volunteer and engage, and specifically in person, because we've been behind a screen for so long. So many people were really ready to, I just want to volunteer. I just want to be involved. And we had families coming. So the need was increasing, and the stress and the workload of trying to balance Atlanta and Savannah, it was more than I could handle. And I wasn't able, because I'm not in Savannah, to facilitate and manage those relationships in Savannah very well. So we hired Lindsay, and she's only been here. How long have you been here now, Lindsay? 3 weeks?
2 weeks and 2 days.
Yes.
And it's been a great experience so far. And what she's saying, now we've kicked up. I mean, there's so many families coming in. There's a lot to do, and so I'm really happy to take the torch, so to say, or so to speak, and just run with it here. So nice to meet you all. And so Sarah's here to help me out, though, to help me navigate it until I'm able to run on my own 2 feet.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of wanted to give you a background and overview of just my role and Lindsay's role, and so what you can kind of expect as far as communication and who everybody is. And I was hoping Melanie could join us on a call this morning. She is the manager of that office in Savannah, but we have an arrival right now in Savannah. So she's at the airport receiving a family, and she wasn't able to join us, but I just kind of wanted you to meet and see. So Lindsay is, she's from the Savannah area. She lives in Savannah, and she can do such a better job managing those relationships and understanding and corresponding. So already she's done in her 2 weeks way better than I was able to do in the months that I was managing Savannah, just because I don't have familiarity with that area. So Lindsay will be the person that you're corresponding with. If you would have any questions, she's the person you will call. I just step in, and sometimes I'm CC'd on emails, mostly just so that if she's, wants me to give extra information, or she's not quite sure if the way she answered was the way I would have answered it, or if she has any questions that she's not able to answer, I'm fully available. She and I talk almost every day. And so I can jump on a call with everyone, with someone, with her, whatever. So I just want you guys to know that you'll primarily be communicating with Lindsay, but if at any point you or she feels like she doesn't have the information she needs, I'm very available and want to. So that's our roles. That's who we are. And then I was going to jump into kind of next steps. And we have a family that we identified that you guys could sponsor, and what does that look like, things like that. So do you have any questions before we move into that?
One quick question, Lindsay. I know I've had a bunch of email correspondence back and forth between you all. Do we have a phone number for Lindsay in that email, do we think?
It should be in her signature.
Okay.
Is your work number in your signature? Yeah, it should be in.
Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
I'll put it in the chat box too, just so you can see it right now.
Thanks.
Yeah. So one of the things we were talking about is we have so many Afghan families coming in. And I thought Lindsay could actually go over, she this morning went over with me the arrivals, and just so you kind of get an understanding of, wow, what's happening in our office. And also maybe allow you to have some patience if there's a delay in response time or something like that. Because it's amazing the work that they're doing. And we identified one specific family of 5 who are actually arriving tomorrow. And I was going to give you their information and talk to you about that. But one of the things we were talking about is, with the donation that you guys have allocated, we think we could serve more than one family with that. We really think that with all the families we've got coming, that it would be more beneficial for us to divide it up and sponsor more than one family. And I wanted to see if that was okay with you guys, and then also talk through what that money is going to go towards. And let me first say that I have a volunteer orientation. I have actually one tonight, and then I have one coming up on November 7th. Those are, a couple hours long, where I talk about all the things that we do, all the things that the agency does, what they're responsible for. So you guys are welcome to join those if you want. But the information that I'm giving you, I'm kind of giving you a commercial of, there's so much more, right? There's so much more information, but I don't want to take 2.5 hours to share that with you. So the money that you're giving, we find housing for them. We enroll them in the social services as far as, food stamps. They get what we generally call refugee Medicaid. It's, I believe it's 9 months of Medicaid. So their first initial 9 months, they can have medical insurance. And then the goal is that they would be enrolled in a job that would provide insurance benefits by the time that expires. We enroll the kids in school. We try to get the adults in English classes. And so these are all the things that the agency is providing. What we're noticing, so what we primarily have worked with refugees, and refugees, there's a very specific process for refugees. And actually, Lindsay, as I'm thinking about the orientation that we're going to be doing tonight, one of the things we should add is the APA, the Afghan Placement Assistance. We don't have any slides on that. Just, I always talk about refugees and the immigration process for refugees. That's a well-oiled machine. We've been resettling refugees in the US since 1981. And so that process is very thorough and it's very organized. And I say all that to say that the US does do that very well. With the Afghans, that was a rescue effort. That was not a planned, organized resettlement effort. And so it's chaotic. It's unorganized, and there are lots of holes, and there are things that have been changed. Like, it's constantly changing. When they first arrived, we were told that they were not going to receive any of these social services that refugees receive. So at first, we were fundraising for everything. We're like, they're not going to get rental assistance, they're not going to get Medicaid, they're not going to get food stamps. Like, how in the world? And they're not going to be eligible to work for 6 plus months. The government has understood that that's not a successful placement model. And so there's been things that have changed to allow them to receive the same services that refugees receive. That means that, they have to apply for their work permit. Refugees come day one, they're eligible to work. Our Afghans are going to have to apply for that. We originally were told that process was going to take over 6 months. Now they're expediting, and it's taking closer to like 6 to 8 weeks. So there still is a gap there of them not being able to work and us not being able to place them in jobs. And that's where your financial support is going to be crucial. It's going to help with their first month's rent. It's going to help with, utilities. It's going to help with, we get a food stamp card for them, but that usually takes a couple of weeks because we have to apply for it. So food for the families when they first arrive. And that means we're taking them to the grocery store. We're allowing them to pick out food that they're comfortable cooking and they're familiar with, right? So especially as we're going into winter, one of the things that we'll be doing is a coat drive for all of our refugees and immigrants that have arrived this year, because winter coats are not cheap. I feel like I can manage an Old Navy sale, a Target sale, Kohl's is always, got the Kohl's box. Like, we know kind of how to work our American systems and get things for cheap. But if you're having to last year when I was trying to buy coats to make up for the ones that weren't donated, I thought, go to Walmart, right? Walmart's generally the cheapest. It was actually more expensive for me to buy a coat at Walmart than it was for me when Old Navy had their sale. And I knew that, right? Like, I was able to navigate that. But if you are a newly arrived immigrant, you may not even know what your options are to buy coats. And so if you need a coat for every person in the family and you're 5 to 7 people, that's really pushes you outside your range of things like that. That puts you in a bind, right? So we do a coat drive where we try to provide every single person who's arrived this year, so since last winter, with a winter coat. Your donations will help provide that. I'd love to partner with your church to get donated coats for.
We actually, every year, Sarah, we do a coat drive for the church. And so, I don't know, it was maybe 150 coats that we received. And we purchased some, like you did, kind of those puffy jackets, that kind of thing. Children's coats, adult coats, women's coats. And we distributed those to multiple agencies in town, but we can certainly connect with you to.
We would love that. Yeah, we would love that. Love that. That would be awesome. So I just kind of wanted to talk through a little bit about what your what your money will go towards. I think it'll also help as far as like, we will be finding them a job, but rent until then. And ideally even maybe, we'll opening a bank account where they can have, you have to have money to open a bank account, right? And so those are kind of the things, but I just think that we will be able to support more than one family. Lindsay, do you mind? Let's do two things. I'd love for you to start with just the arrivals this week. Who's coming in this week and next week, and then the family that we specifically identified. Well, they're what we call a free case, means that they don't have any family or friends in Savannah that they're being already connected with. Some of our cases do have family or friends that are going to just help them with their transition, and so we identified a family who doesn't have that at all. I'd love to give you their information, and then we were thinking about potentially additional families.
Okay, so we have a lot of arrivals coming. Just last week we had two brothers come in, a 17 and a 19-year-old. They're staying with their cousin. We had a young lady come in by herself, and then a couple with this little cute newborn baby. And they've been in the bases now waiting for weeks and weeks. And so a lot of them are really anxious to, get settled in. So this week, let me see. This week we have another individual coming in, and that's probably who Melanie's seeing today. And then tomorrow, the Pohan family, which is the one we were talking about, they're coming in, and it's a family of 5. There's 2 sons and 1 daughter. I don't know their exact ages, but I think we have a lot of young children coming in, from my understanding, so I think they are kind of younger. And let me see, we have another family coming in November of 6, another of 4 coming in any day now. And that's what, we have a date of arrival, but we don't exactly know. And so like 2 days before we find out, or just a few days before, we'll find out that they're coming. And so then it is, especially with the housing right now, a scramble. We do have some temporary housing that we're able to put them in before we find the long-term housing, which is nice, but also, it's putting them somewhere and then resettling them somewhere else. So kind of, it's always really nice to just get them directly into their home, which hopefully we'll be able to do for a few of them. And then in November, we have more and more coming, and I know from my understanding that they could just keep coming. So, I mean, we have like 5 or 6 families right now, at least, and then we'll be having more coming in. So I wish we had more details. I know there's like a list of their ages somewhere, but I can't find it right now. But just to kind of give you a snapshot of like what we're working with, and all these are the Afghanistan families coming in as well.
I was going to say, can you offer us a snapshot of, are these individuals and families who have lived their entire lives in Afghanistan? Are they like, can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of their backgrounds of what they were living prior to this?
Yeah, so most.
And what kind of work they did, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of the Afghan families are coming because someone in the family worked with our U.S. military. So they were translators or guides or even working on base with the military. And the reason that they have had to flee is in their home country, they're considered traitors for that service. And the U.S. is trying to repay sort of by providing that safety here in the U.S. That's not because of the chaotic nature of it. There were some other people included in the rescue, but for the most part, that is what they were. Most of them speak Dari or Farsi. A lot of the men speak English. Generally, the women and children don't. And the process of the best way I know to explain it is rescue, right? The process of that was, boarding a plane in Afghanistan, and they were taken to a foreign military base, Germany, Italy, France, just to get out, like just get out, right? And there they began initial screening. I've heard of lots of people who were denied, returned because of their, family's affiliation with a militant group or their own personal. So they do screening, security screening overseas. And once which is what the refugees go through as well. But once they've gone through that and the US approves them, then they were moved. 28 countries do refugee resettlement. So they're going to all over, not just the US. But for those that the US chose to resettle or accept, they were put on military bases around the US. They, during that time, were given like health screenings, additional background screenings. They do biometric checks. They're doing interviews, things like that before they are free to release from the military base. During that time, they're also receiving their vaccinations. So they received a COVID vaccine as well as MMR, chickenpox, all the things that our children receive in order to go to school. They're coming from countries that didn't have that same vaccination process. So they're getting all of their vaccines, and they're getting initial medical attention for, high blood pressure, diabetes, anything that, that is a need. There was also a 21-day quarantine on the US military base. So they have completed that quarantine and then are being resettled across the US. I read this morning that there are 55,000 Afghans on military bases across the US. And so far, the US as a whole, agencies have resettled 5,800. Yeah. So there are a lot more left. And that's kind of the reason we're getting so many. And I think it's important, and this is stuff I would go over in training and orientation, to understand that these are populations who have experienced trauma, very recent trauma. And so that trauma is very fresh, and they're coping with that and through whatever coping mechanisms are familiar to them. And we are experiencing a lot of expressions of anger from the families that we're resettling. So this is not their American dream that has come true. They do not feel like they've won the lottery to get to come to America. They had homes, they had lives. Most of the people we're working with had careers. They went to university, they got degrees, and they had career jobs. And that was all upended overnight without expectation. Like they didn't know that was going to happen. A lot of our families went through very traumatic experiences just to get out, being beaten, swimming through trenches, being separated from their family. So the experience of fleeing was traumatic. And then they arrive and they can finally start processing that trauma. And it is often expressing itself. Anger is a secondary emotion, right? And it's something that you use to cope with the emotions you're not able to process. So I think it's helpful for people to understand, and agencies are getting a lot of that. Like, I don't like where I'm living. I want you to come more often. Things like that. And I think volunteers sometimes will hear just complaints and disgruntled. And for us, I think we've just tried to be very empathetic, very understanding, validate their feelings, not argue, even if they're not right, not say that, just, I hear you, I'm really sorry, this must be hard. And that was more than you asked for, but I just thought to give you a frame of reference.
But I appreciate hearing that. Yeah. That's helpful.
And I have a question. What about their mental health services, or what's being offered for that?
Yeah. That's a question I'm not sure the answer in Savannah. I know what our resources are in Atlanta.
I will say that I used to work for a prevention agency, and so I in the public health realm here, and so there's a couple of contacts like Chatham County Safety Net. They do a lot of like trauma-informed training, mental health services. So I have some connections I want to let all my colleagues know about because that is important. Even they offer something called trauma drama where they'll do improv with the kids, and it's a way for them to like process their trauma, but in, you know, a very proactive way through improv, which is really interesting. But they do all types of stuff for both adults and children. So I'm working to make those connections as well.
How about with hugs? Are you familiar with them?
I am familiar. I know I talked to one of the really involved volunteers there. But that's something that, and of course, as I'm new, I'm getting a feel too for what my colleagues are already familiar with and what they are using as well. And so getting a feel for that. But then, yeah, and so I think that's anything that we can do to help make those connections, you know, will help because yeah, once we have them, their body's safe, right? We definitely need to make sure that we're then attending to the internal as well.
And what about the what schools are y'all looking at through Savannah?
Well, so for a lot of these families coming in, we work very closely with the schools to make sure that they find. So they have to do, from my understanding, like a screening, a test to kind of find out, you know, what their grade level is at or what their understanding is. And then an ESL, so English is the second language. There's only a few schools that offer that here. And the main two that they go to is West Chatham Middle School and Groves High School is the one that offers that as well. And I think those are the two. And then depending on how they test, for instance, we have a family who came in, a family of 6, and they have 2 high school boys, a middle schooler, and an elementary school. And she's going to May Howard, the elementary. And they're all spread out. And that's what's crazy too. Because it takes 2 weeks, a week or two for the buses to be retransferred. So right now I'm like trying to get volunteers to take these kids to school and they all have to go like across town. I don't know how families are expected to do that. Anyways, so and the boys though that they scored enough that they could transfer to another school if they wanted to. So the family's deciding that. But long answer, Groves and West Chatham are the main ones for the ESL to make sure that they're getting the English as a second language training as well.
Usually elementary kids, regardless of their language level, go directly into school. Middle and high, they'll try to focus on English first.
Mm-hmm. Hess has a really strong ESL program too. Yeah. That's really grown, and they have lots and lots of students in that program now. And of course, that's right. We're at Lindsay. I guess you know where we're sort of situated, but Hess is our closest public school that we have to the church.
So if you guys have any connections to affordable housing, that's our biggest challenge. So what they are doing is looking for landlords, like people who have rental properties or spaces, because the traditional way of like getting an apartment or renting a house or whatever is you have to have a work history and a background check, and like we can do the deposit and they get background screenings just to come, but they don't have a social security number yet, so they can't submit the traditional background check. They're not going to have a work history. And so we can ensure that we're going to get them a job, but we really have to, it's easier for us to work with people who are willing and able to kind of work around the system, the traditional system.
So question, because I have 2 individuals, church members who have a variety of rental properties.
I just texted somebody.
Okay. And we just texted another person, but so if I'm the landlord, do I get rent? I mean, they get rent from the agency.
Yeah, they'll be signing a lease.
It's really just a matter of that risk because there's no previous history. Yeah. So, okay, because that makes a big difference, I think, it's not looked at as a donation from the landlord.
No,
That's good.
absolutely not. No. And we don't want, so that's one of the reasons why we want to take what your donation and spread it out. We don't want to be disempowering. We want to empower them. So we still, even for the families that we're paying, we've got a couple of church partners that have like parish houses that they are giving us for rent free. But we're still having the family pay rent, and we're putting that into savings so that when they're able to move out of that house, they already have a deposit. They already have some savings prepared to be paying rent on their own, because we want them to have that experience of paying, right? And if they're paying, they also have a little bit of investment in, you know, in the weight of caring for the place, and they've got something on the line, right? And most of our families, they're used to working. They're used to like, and so they don't want a handout. They don't want to be a charity case. They already have been in so many ways, and they're ready to get back on their feet and to feel, you know, that empowerment and integrity that comes from providing for their families. You know, that's really hard for a lot of the men, what they've had, how they've had to rely on other people. So absolutely. I wanted to mention one more thing. Well, actually, two more things I want to make sure I cover, and then I think can open up to whatever you guys want to cover. The first thing is I want to talk about being involved. You know, we would love for you guys to be involved beyond just a financial donation. I think you expressed that desire as well. So what does that look like? That looks like we have teams of churches, multiple teams of churches that are involved with families. So this is not a new thing. This is a process that we're familiar with. So the way we like lay it out in steps that make sense to us is for you to get together a group of people, however many people that want to be involved with a family. And we try to keep that 6 to 8 people. That can be couples or individuals or whatever. That doesn't include children. So families are welcome. We love for families to volunteer. But they're not kind of counted in that 6 to 8, right? And if we get more than that, we would want to connect you with another family. We would like to have, because what we don't want is for our immigrant families to feel like have an open door of hospitality, that they just have to keep hosting whoever comes and visits them, and they're constantly, you know, hosting people. So we don't want the burden to be on them to care for us, right? That's not the goal. So if we keep it to a small knit group of people, then the relationship can be built. They can build a friendship, and it can be a mutual relationship ideally. So, you know, kind of send it out. See how many people want to be involved, you know, how many people sign up. I always cast the net wider, because the number of people signing up versus the number of people that make it through the volunteer process, it kind of does of this. So don't get overwhelmed if you've got, you know, 35 people that want to volunteer. Okay, great. You might get 12 who actually complete the process. So you can do that. And then you need to identify a team leader, you know, someone that Lindsay's going to be contacting with at the church, because if she's, you know, even with the, you know, 4 people here on the call, if she's getting emails from different people, it's kind of hard to keep up with. And I already answered that question to you, but now you're asking it and I forgot to CC you. So it's really helpful if we can just have one point of contact with the church. You can have a separate point of contact for the team if you want, and then each team can have their own team captain, I guess you could call it. And that's the person who will say, this number of people have completed so the process includes an application, which is really just creating a profile on our volunteer database, background check, and orientation. Those are the 3 steps in our process. Once someone's completed all 3, then they're ready to be involved with a family. And so we can kind of communicate that, okay, here's the number of people who've gone through this. We're still waiting on this from these people. With the team captain, they can kind of go back to their team and say, hey, you know, we really want to meet this family. Can you get this done? So the background check, we asked for a $35 donation for that because we have to pay for it. So like each individual, but there are some caveats. So it's only 18 and up. So kids don't need to do a background check. If it's a couple, I'm fine with one background check for the couple, as long as whoever doesn't do the background check always goes with someone who does. So if you're like, we're always going to go together as a family, then you only need one background check. But if it's like, well, I'd really like to be involved with the men and I want to be involved with the children or whatever, we would love for, you know, each person to have a background check. So background check and then orientation. That orientation, I have a recorded version of it. I'm hosting one tonight. I'm hosting one in November, virtually, of course. And then, these are opportunities for Lindsay to shadow me doing orientations, and eventually she'll be hosting them on her own, both in person and virtual. So we do offer them in person. I'm just doing them virtual for now so that I can continue to offer orientations for Savannah and not drive down there, even though I love Savannah. So we could come to your church. If you're gathering and you're like, oh, we know Wednesday night we have classes, or Sunday after, Sunday night, whatever, you could get everybody together and we can come host an orientation for everybody at one time. If you would like, that's an option. So once we have all of that, then you can start really visiting a family. That can take up time. And we've got Thanksgiving coming up. We've got Christmas break. You have Christmas programs at church and pageants and parties and all of that. So I recognize that there's going to be some delay in all of that. And we don't really want you to be put on a shelf until January when you've already donated. So I would love to get, you four or a couple of you, whatever, involved as soon as possible. And then you can kind of start passing the baton or spreading the word. You can say, oh, I met this family. This is so great. Like, here's, or whatever. And from personal experience, you can start, garnering some interest. And the family arrives tomorrow, the specifics family. So if anybody wants to go to the airport tomorrow, you're also, the background check and all that doesn't have to be done before going to the airport, because you're going to be with a staff member. So you can.
What time is their arrival time tomorrow?
Yeah, I can't tell. Is that Lindsay?
Sorry, very specific question answer thing.
Well, I asked this morning because I knew I wanted to be able to share that with y'all. And
it's going to be at 8:24 tomorrow evening.
And you can have as many people or as few, right? You can make posters. You don't have to. You can show up in your pajamas. Like, it's, I'm just saying, it's as low key as you want it to be, or you can, whatever. Just welcome.
I will say, she says, I think they have, they may actually have a U.S. tie. But they can't stay with them for very long. So I think they're going to stay with them that night. And then she's saying that we will need to move them into housing the next day on Thursday, 10/28. So we have a house that we may be able to move them to in Richmond Hill. We're finding that out. Again, we're trying to find this out right now. Otherwise, we have some temporary housing that we can move them into. If we are able to move them into the permanent housing, we'll need help with apartment setup. We have furnishings. We take donations for those furnishings to help supplement, but we'll need people to help us move it and to set up the apartment so that when the family comes in, it's a fully furnished apartment or house. There's groceries in the fridge and they don't have to worry about anything, right? So yeah. And I know that's upcoming, real soon. We do have some active volunteers we can get to help, but just FYI, that's kind of some of the stuff that sponsorships, the first friends will usually help us with too.
So if anybody's available on Thursday and wants to go grocery shopping or set up an apartment, if you have an hour or 2 hours, probably not need more than that. But even if you just have an hour on Thursday, I'm sure there's something you could do. And I know Richmond Hill's a little far from where you are, so that's also a little bit of a drive. But all of this stuff can be done without going through the official process, because you're not going to be one-on-one with the family without a staff person. So right. I also want to say, people who are coming through the process later, because we'd like for you to sponsor multiple families, could do the same thing a little bit further down the road. Last thing I want to cover, and then I want to just open it up to whatever you guys want to talk about, is faith. This is very much a live your love, show them your love as opposed to telling them. You're going to have a language barrier. So even as basic as if you were to try to share, the words could mean different things. They could have a different understanding of the English word you're using. But understanding that they have come through a very traumatic experience. And if we were to put each of you through a traumatic experience, I believe you would cling to your faith as what would carry you through it and what would get you through to the other side. I suspect and experience it to be no different for these families, even though their faith is different. So the last thing I want to do is try to take from them a faith that has carried them through a traumatic experience because we don't agree that it is, a true faith or whatever. And so I think it's really important when I'm working with churches for them to be respectful and understanding that, the families so far all have been Muslim, all of our Afghan. I know there are Christian Afghans. We just so far have not resettled any in this. I mean, I have in history, but not recently. And so they are relying on their, Islamic faith to carry them through this. And so it's totally fine for you to not agree with that, or to, if it comes up, which it probably wouldn't, I wouldn't expect them to try to convert you or to try to share with you. I don't need you to agree or believe. I just think, especially in the early days, that's something that just needs to be left out of conversation and just live out your faith. And you can say you're from a church. You can say you're from a Christian church. Like, that's totally fine. I will say I have had families who have asked people not to come back because once they say I'm from a church, because they feel like, oh, your goal then is to convert me, and so I can do without you. I don't need you. I think it's better to just, I'm an American friend, we're than Spiritus. You can say we all know each other from church, but if you identify yourself as coming from a church to serve them, oftentimes you won't get an invitation back. And it's their home, and they're free to handle their home how they want. Like, that's one of the things we offer here in the US is freedom, and freedom of religion specifically. And they're coming from oppressive religious countries where that wasn't an option. So I cover that in orientation, but I just wanted to make sure, we were real upfront in the beginning as well.
Good. I think this is all really, really helpful. I love that you are open with a $10,000 gift from the church, that you feel able to support multiple families. I think that's really encouraging to us, and I know our missions team will really appreciate hearing that. I would love it as well. I mean, I love being able to support a family that's coming and tomorrow. I think it's wonderful that our gift can help them. As we move forward, if we make contacts with individuals who have a little bit more local South Side Savannah housing, yes, that's an easier connection point for us. Richmond Hill is far for us.
Yeah.
And so if we can work together with that for a future family that we might sponsor or support, that would be amazingly wonderful. I feel like that would be a great connection point for us, an accessible connection point for us.
I think that's a good note to make, Lindsay. And I will say, this is the only family I know going to Richmond Hill, and it's because of the issue we're having with housing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a great Methodist church in Richmond Hill,
yeah,
and so you might want to contact them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because they really, it's a great church.
It is a great church.
And mission oriented. So
okay, thank you. Awesome. So
you don't know the ages of the children that are coming tomorrow, right?
No, I don't. Melanie, she is with people right now, I believe.
That's fine. If you find out later in the day, would you just maybe send me an email and let me know?
And like, are y'all picking them up in vans? I mean, how do you have transportation big enough for
we
them?
We do have a big old van.
Okay. Because we have a church bus. That's why I was just saying.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think next steps from here then would be a follow-up email this afternoon with, we have their names, but names and ages. And then you can respond to that. Well, and I think, Lindsay, if you'll add flight details as well, like flight number and arrival time, and then you guys can share that. And if if you can respond if you hear that anyone wants to come. And then also if anyone wants to help on Thursday, just be in contact with Lindsay and she'll find out the address and the time frame, things like that. No pressure. We just want to give you options. And then we will plan to take some of your funds to financially support this family until all of their other social resources have come in. And I think that then if you want to start, identifying a team or building a team, work with Lindsay, and she can walk everybody through that volunteer process. She can share with them the link to apply, the background check. We can do an orientation, all of that. And then I think what we would probably do is maybe wait and get some people on board to sponsor the next family. And then that way we can potentially identify housing closer to you through your connections or through other connections that we found, and just go from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. And Latne, I'm gonna put you on the spot just a minute. I'm thinking about Marie DeAngelis.
Mm-hmm.
I know she had such a heart for learning about this program, this ministry. I don't know what your schedule and Marie's schedule look like on Thursday, but I would offer that up as a good fit for the two of you to tackle that project on Thursday, maybe.
It would be with our staff. You would just be helping. It wouldn't be in charge of anything.
Okay. All right. Poor Latne.
I will check with her.
Okay. I think that's good. Well, I'm excited about this. Nancy, I know you're still on mute over there, but do you have any questions or thoughts, Nancy, about what you've got? Questions that you might have, Nancy?
No, I'm also excited. I just sent you a text. I have a haircut, so I have to leave in a minute. But I like the thoughts, and I like the reminder about us not to proselytize, and it'll be interesting. It'd be great if we can get some of the church members involved.
I agree.
Sorry, let me just end with one story. My volunteer orientations are really long because I love to tell stories, and I've made it through this entire meeting without sharing a story, but I just have to. We were working with a Baptist church in Atlanta, a mega church, one of those. If I shared the name of the pastor, everybody's going to know who it is. And during the Syrian crisis a few years ago, which was similar to this Afghan crisis, and so we were getting same influx of Syrians like we are with Afghans, and we were resettling them out in the suburbs because we were having a hard time with housing. Just everything's the same, right? We've been here before. So we had this mega church who was really helping with us finding housing, transportation for the families, all of that. But they are Baptist and they are evangelical, and that is at the core of who they are. I grew up my entire life Baptist, so I fully understand. And I was sharing this, about living your love instead of speaking it. And it was really hard. And I'll tell you, I had a group, this was 6 years ago, but I had a group of older women who it makes me cry every time I think about it. They organized a transportation team to drive a couple of these families. They lived in a complex, so used the church bus and drove these families to and from the mosque every single day. During their first few weeks of arrival, because they were like, this is so important for them to connect to their faith community. And we cannot imagine being uprooted and put in a foreign country and knowing that there was a church nearby, but we could not get to it, and feeling isolated from our faith. And so they drove them back and forth every day. They observed Ramadan. This group of women fasted and prayed, and they said, we're going to pray to our God, but we are going to engage in this ritual with you, alongside you. They broke the feast together. They ended up hosting a funeral of one of the family members inside the church, which was a really big deal. they paid for the funeral and everything. It was just such a gift. And honestly, several of those families now attend that church because it was over the course of 2 years, the women had just loved them diligently and faithfully and never asked anything of them, just walked alongside them. And eventually they were like, for these particular Syrian families, they felt that their faith had always been ritual and tradition and obligation, and they saw these women loving out of a true desire and not out of an obligation or out of a fear of what would happen if they didn't. And they were like, we want that. We want what you have. We want the kind of faith that compels us to love, not obedient, not just obedience. And I've seen lots of other, people do it other ways and it's not resulted in that. But I always go back to that if you can set aside, an agenda of saving or proselytizing, and you can just walk alongside and love, it's going to show. They're going to know. They're going to know.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's a great story. Uh-huh.
So is there a mosque in Savannah?
Yes, I know that there is one near that house, Lindsay. I don't know if there's another one, but.
Where is it? I don't even know.
I know there's one near Bull Street, but that's a long street, near Bull and 35th.
Okay.
But that's really far from Richmond Hill, but
Yes.
that makes sense
Correct.
that there could be one around in that area.
I think we found that there is like a mosque in Richmond Hill about 20 minutes away from it.
That's good.
Hey, Lindsay, do you want the number to Richmond Hill Methodist Church?
Yes, let me pull up my notes. Oh, okay, I'm ready for it.
Hang on a second. Let me go back to. It's 912-756-2190. And Jay Tucker is the pastor.
Thank you. I'll definitely get in touch with them.
Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
For your ministry. What
Yeah.
an incredible ministry.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, you guys love on Lindsay. She has done a wonderful job in just 2 weeks. I already feel like she's been there a month. She's definitely done more than a month's worth of work.
Where are you located, Lindsay?
Well, our office is south side, and then I live here in Savannah, and I was raised down in Rankin. So then went to Armstrong when it was Armstrong, of course. Yeah, and just I always wanted to go and make a difference, and then realized that there's lots to do here at home. So you kind of have to, be where you're planted and really feel that. So it's really great to be able to do this work.
Good.
Wonderful.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we'll be in touch with next steps, and we can move this as quickly or as slowly as you guys want to, but just know that there's lots to do, and I really look forward to working with you.
Super. Thank you so much, ladies. We
Thanks.
appreciate the information and y'all sharing what you do, and we're excited to be connected with you as a partner in this.
Thanks. I'll send you the recording so you can pass it along. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.